Good afternoon, everyone. This is Alexis Gingerella with Recruiting Daily, welcoming you back to another awesome educational webinar in the series we have been putting on for 2018. Today, we're talking about the future of predictive recruiting metrics. Dun, dun, dun. And per usual, we have a game plan. You are in listen-only mode, meaning you can hear us, we cannot hear you. But no worries. We're going to see your questions as they come in on the control panel because you're going to participate and it's going to be great. Also, if you can't stay the whole time, no worries. We're recording this. So you'll get it within 24 hours along with a copy of the presentation. And if you want to, you can always reach out to me personally, Alexis at recruitingdaily.com, to answer any questions about anything you might have missed today. I would like to shout out a special thanks to our special sponsor, Glassdoor, for making sure that this could happen today. If you guys don't already know, Glassdoor is one of the fastest growing jobs and recruiting sites in the world. And we here at Recruiting Daily partnered with them recently because what we're doing is we want to bring some cool offers and opportunities to all of you guys. So we've got some stories and some stuff behind the scenes that we have worked out with Glassdoor to help tell their story a little bit better, get their brand out there, and talk a lot about what we can do to help integrate them into a lot of the TA process around the world. So check them out. And at the end of the day, I mentioned earlier, you're all going to get a little email reminder with the recording and everything in it. We're including a special offer in there with some great resources from Glassdoor. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be pretty awesome. Now I'm going to throw it to today's experts that are going to talk about predictive recruiting metrics. And I'm just going to hand it over to this lovely lady, Sarah Brennan. She's going to talk about herself. Ryan's going to talk about himself. And we're going to get going. Sarah?
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Ryan and Lex. My name's Sarah Brennan. I'm the founder of Accelir. We are a consulting firm and analyst firm that is focused on talent and how to better integrate talent acquisition, talent retention, and talent engagement into our business. And so we work a lot with executive teams, with HR teams, as well as with the investors and vendors in the space to try to build better products and put in better processes and strategies. You could find me around online at I'm So Sarah. Ryan?
Awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming on. Everyone's heard my spiel before, so I don't need to go too deep. But yes, I am with Recruiting Daily. We do a lot of good things around content, HR, and recruiting. So whatever you need, we've got it. Quick story before we get started. I don't know what year we actually met in person, Sarah, but it's gotta be. I'm looking at the calendar here, and no Facebook members have come up
Don't
yet.
date us too much. I think it was pre-Facebook.
Yeah. It's pre-Facebook. Guys, look, here's the deal. Sarah has been around the block a beginning time. Well, hey, back up. Reword, rephrase. She's been in this game a long time. She is absolutely one of the smartest people I have ever worked with, and I'm not just saying that because she's presenting here. It's true. A lot of our clients use her. She's just got wisdom beyond wisdom. So if you have any questions, if you need help, you want to, pick her mind. She's a busy person, but if you have some things that she can help you with, she is always going to be there for you. So definitely check her out. Let's push forward. Before we get to the question, let's launch the first poll. So we've got a poll that we want to put out there that we want to kick off with, kind of set the expectations here. So a couple of things as we're launching this poll here. Go ahead and answer the poll, and then we're going to get started. But when you have questions, put them into the Q&A area. Lex will moderate those over to me. Sarah and I will answer those the best way that we can. Anything we cannot answer, we will certainly get an answer back to you. Of course, after the webinar itself. So go ahead and take a moment, answer the poll, and then we're gonna kick off. So Lex, why don't we let this run another 15 seconds, 20 seconds or so? And Sarah, do you want to set some expectations for today?
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is obviously send over questions. I'm not a huge fan of webinars where somebody just talks at you for an hour and then that ends and we all go on our way. I mean, you're here because you want to get some value and have benefit for your organization. Otherwise, you wouldn't be spending an hour with us today. So ask questions, send tweets. I'm, again, on Twitter at I'm So Sarah. I'll be kind of monitoring that also as we go through. Send questions through. We're here to make sure you get out of the conversation today. So this is definitely going to be very conversational between Ryan and I. We're going to be covering some of the key questions that I get asked very frequently around predictive recruiting and predictive metrics and what that all means. But if you have something, send it over. Don't necessarily wait for the end for the Q&A. Let's just have a conversation and you guys get out of today what you want to get out of today.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and kick off. Lex, do you have the results you can push up? All right, here we go. So what type of metrics are you currently using? Sarah, there's your results. What are your thoughts, first glance?
This is exactly what I was expecting, with one exception. I'm so excited that so many of you are using prescriptive analytics within your metrics for recruiting. That is a really excitingly high number. For those of you that are using whatever is in the ATS, or even more so the ones that have no idea what any of these mean, that's totally okay. We're going to make sure that we set a base level so you have a good understanding of what this is and why it's necessary as we kind of continue to talk about the future and the trends and what is going to be going on and why this is going to impact you, your job, our candidates, and our companies. So where this is at right now is really in line, again, with the exception of the prescriptive being so high, with what we would otherwise see in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I think as we go forward, somewhere today, if we can define what each of those mean for those on the call, because again, I'm not sure that everybody truly understands that, but I think a good definition would be good as well. So let's go ahead and kick off. The first question we've got: predictive recruiting metrics sound like a buzzword. What exactly is it?
Well, great place to define those different types of metrics. So there's really three types of analytics that take place. And so I'm going to pull back from talking about predictive analytics and just talk about analytics in general right now. The first type is descriptive, also what we refer to as metrics. For most of us, this is what is simply in our applicant tracking system, what we have before applicant tracking systems. If anybody on the call used to recruit before they got an ATS and you were making tally marks, actually big counts of numbers throughout the week. Basic analytics or descriptive analytics are what we used to do, and they are simply metrics. I interviewed 6 candidates. I gave 4 people offers. I had 3 people accept an offer. That's it. And so they are by far the most common. And that is what, again, is in the bulk of most applicant tracking systems and talent management systems. The reason being, they're the easiest to do. There's not a logic behind them. It's simply counting. 1, 2, 3, yes, no, 1 yes, 3 no's. It's a very simple way to do it.
So this is just because we're getting a couple of hits here on questions. So yes, to confirm, yes, this is simple. You're in your ATS, you run a report, you're a recruiting manager, you run a report to see what your team has done this week, and you're seeing 30 people in step A, stage B, stage C, stage D, and so on and so forth. That's what we're talking about here, correct?
Yep, that's descriptive analytics. We used to just simply refer to them as metrics, but as other analytics came into place, we had to get fancy and no longer call them metrics anymore. So they're descriptive analytics. They describe what we used to do or what our actions have been. The next step is predictive, and that is taking a look at what kind of has happened as well as what could happen. But we, as recruiters, as analysts, as TA leaders, HR leaders, are the ones that are really analyzing the data to make recommendations then on what we should be doing in the future. And so predictive analytics take a look not just at here's how many interviews we have done so far, but it might say based on that, we're expecting then to make 3 offers based on that number of interviews. So it's predicting a little bit about what can happen, but it's up to us still to do the true analysis for connecting it to the rest of our business, to the rest of our P&L, to the rest of our recommendations in the future. It's just giving us a little insight. That make sense?
It does to me. Sorry, I was answering
Okay.
a question. I was on the backside answering a question, and I was delayed there. I apologize. Yeah, no, definitely, for sure. So,
No problem.
yeah,
And then
sorry.
the third type is prescriptive. And this is really, I mean, the biggest thing about predictive and the biggest shock about the future of predictive analytics is that they're going to go away pretty quickly, because the goal and the ultimate goal is going to be prescriptive analytics, which is the predictive. So it's what has happened, what does that mean that could happen, and then the prescriptive is going to give us recommendations on what we should be doing in the future in order to influence other behavior. And so that is really where our data, and I hate the term big data, but that's where kind of big data comes in to really provide benefits. So for example, when we're trying to look at hiring somebody, and we need to figure out where we're going to post it. Descriptive might say, here's where we have previously posted it and how many candidates we got from each of those. Predictive might say, here's where we posted it previously, here's how many candidates we got, and here's how many we would expect to get this time. And then prescriptive would say, here's where we previously posted, here's how many candidates we got, here's how many we expect this time, but here's the sites that we should be spending more money on or spending more efforts on, because those are going to produce the candidates that are also going to most likely to accept a job offer, be here 2 years later, and have high quality of hire ratings.
That's right. Now, question regarding roles and responsibilities around metrics. So we have a mix of people on the call today. We've got some recruiters, we have sourcers. I'm looking through the list, and I can see for sure we do have a handful, or let's say a handful, a good amount of recruiting managers, heads of talent on the call today. And so we have different people in different roles, and I know there's some burning questions out there to say, I'm just a recruiter. This means absolutely nothing to me. Can you maybe pinpoint where the roles, or which role should focus in what area, or does that even matter?
No, that doesn't matter at all, because there's different types of analytics that should be used by every single person in an organization, and not just in HR, not just in recruiting. Analytics are used in every other department already. And so we're just a little bit late to the game in some ways over some of the other departments. And so every single role, whether you are a sourcer, you are a recruiting coordinator, you are a recruiter, you are a head of TA, or you're a CHRO, you're going to have different type of metrics that you're looking at, that you're analyzing. And when it comes to prescriptive, that you would be able to take action on. And so it's really comes down to just knowing what the right ones are for your role based on what you have. You know, for prescriptive analytics, I mean, we had 11% of the people on here already doing that. That's incredibly high for that, for where we are at in the market and for the technology that is in place. So for most of us that are actually practitioners, and most organizations that I'm going in and working with, they're either using nothing, or they're using descriptive, and they're trying to figure out how to get to predictive, or even how to use descriptive in a better way. And so again, every single person along the line could and should be understanding their metrics. For a recruiter, it could be as simple as looking at how many interviews does it take for me to get how many candidates in front of a hiring manager, to how many deals I close if you're an agency, but how many hires I get. And then looking and understanding kind of what that is, because it's going to help you work smarter. And it's going to help you work more efficiently.
So you're inside of a whole bunch of clients, big, small, all different sizes. Can you, and I don't know if you can, so maybe this might be going off script a bit, so I apologize. If you can't, just okay. what real world examples do we have? Because this is all good. It's sometimes it's difficult to process if you're not a metrics person, but it's so incredibly important. What examples can you share of how organizations are aligning this into their recruiting function?
You are jumping way ahead.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
No, I can't name names on organizations that I work with. Because often when I'm coming in, it's because, nobody calls me because they're like, hey, everything is going perfect and great. Do you want to just come in and help us be more perfect and great? It's usually not that purpose. So a couple of examples, though, without disclosing a name, would be one of the organizations was really struggling on turnover. And so they had exceptionally high turnover. And so they were not really, they had metrics through their ATS and they had analytics through their ATS, but nobody ever really looked at them. And we went in and started looking at this really high turnover rate. We looked at some of their engagement issues that they were having at the 3-month, 6-month, 9-month process. We ruled out some of the stuff around onboarding and other factors in play. And we found that most of the bad, quote unquote, bad hires or the challenges that they were having from turnover came from the same 3 hiring managers. And when we scaled back that even further, we found that those 3 hiring managers all shared 4 recruiters, but it was only 2 of the recruiters that were having issues with them. Or not having issues with the hiring manager, everything was fine, but when we looked at the metrics, the turnover numbers came back to 2 particular recruiters. What we ended up finding was that the 2 recruiters that ended up having higher turnover had a little bit less business knowledge of what the roles were they were actually hiring for. And we also found that those hiring managers worked very closely with the other recruiters who did have some more business expertise around those particular roles. And so they trusted and relied on the recruiters more heavily. And so it simply came down to the 2 recruiters that had the higher turnover numbers just needed some more business training on the roles they were hiring for, and they needed to learn to maybe not make recommendations if they weren't sure. So we just had to do some coaching and some training of the people in that role, but it ended up greatly reducing turnover and improving engagement by just following the numbers back. And that's without even getting into kind of prescriptive or predictive. It's just really analyzing the metrics and analytics that existed from the get-go.
Right. So we have a question coming in around prescriptive analytics. Do you want me to give those to you now or hold those?
Sure, why not?
All right. So Manish asked if there are any tools used for prescriptive analytics.
There absolutely are. I will not name names on any of these because one of the things I have found is what works for one vendor or what works for one company does not always work for another. So if somebody is looking for a particular product, they're more than welcome to call. It's not something that I'm going to charge you for. I don't do selection as part of my business. So I have no skin in the game on that side of it. But there are some of the recruiting technologies and products that are starting to roll out prescriptive as part of their core. There are a number of other ATSs that will be rolling that out here within the next 12 to 18 months. And then there are some add-on type of solutions that you can do. Again, right now, a lot of those are going to be a little bit more enterprise priced and enterprise friendly. And then it's going to come down to how well they're going to be able to play with your ATS or CRM or whatever technology you are. Predictive really is, prescriptive really is still very early. So even some of the products on the market that are claiming prescriptive, in my opinion, are performing more along the lines of an advanced predictive. They're not quite, it's like the AI thing. Everybody claims AI right now, but if you actually look at it, only about half of the companies are doing it.
Right. Got it. Okay, so the big question 3 here, will this make my job easier or give me more things to do? And I'm sure we're gonna have questions come in. Will this replace my job?
I didn't want to put that on there.
We know it's coming, so I'm just gonna drop it out there.
I didn't want to put it on here, but that is a common thing. You know, historically, I've been, as Ryan said, around this industry for longer than I care to admit. And so I've watched the cycle of new technology come in and go out. And, you know, one of the reasons why a lot of technologies have really struggled, particularly inside of recruiting and TA teams, is because of this fear that it's going to take away a recruiter's job or a sourcer's job, or to minimize the impact that they could have. We saw this really notably with video interviewing, a lot of pushback in that product category. And I think we're seeing the same thing within the analytics and even some of the kind of the chatbots and AI and that side of it, because it's more out of fear and uncertainty and not really understanding how it should integrate, that it's easier just to ignore it and do the job. So one, technically all technology eventually is going to take part of your job. The good thing is analytics takes the crappy part of our job away. There's very few recruiters that tell me, man, I love absolutely everything that I do as a recruiter. For most of us, I'm a former practitioner myself, for most of us, there's a part that we love and we have a lot of passion about, and then there's a part that really kind of bores us out of our mind. And one of the great things with the analytics and a lot of this newer technology is it's automating the part that isn't as exciting or isn't as interesting for us. And so there's a lot of areas where we can actually really quickly see that this can make a job easier and simplify it. So, well, technically it's giving you one more thing to do. It's giving you one more thing to do with means to an end. So, for example, I think one of the biggest and most relevant ways that we are seeing this come into play right now is, and where we're seeing predictive come into play with ATSs is really combined with artificial intelligence and AI, is around the automatic candidate shortlisting. There is a company, Ideal, and I'm naming them only because of the research that they've done, not because of the product. They have done research among users when they do automatic candidate shortlisting that it could claim to save up to 20 hours per opening. And so what the automatic candidate shortlisting does is it will look at past candidates that have made it into your shortlist, have made it into the interview process, have made it into the hiring, and it will take a look at all of the applicants that you currently have in and narrow down or just prioritize. Sometimes it's not about narrowing down, sometimes it's just prioritizing. A lot of the applicant tracking systems do this in their own way currently. When you introduce the predictive or prescriptive analytics into what they're already doing, it's going to make it even better. And it's going to make it even more validated and improve it. And if you can know, if you've got 1,000 applications in, or you've got 500 applications in, you then at least have a starting point on what the best likelihood of a match would be, both for the company long-term as well as for that role. So that's just a quick example of where it could really add a lot of value and a lot of benefit. The other side of it is figuring out where to post a job and sourcing effectiveness. So as you're trying to figure out how to set up your talent pipelines, where you should be doing your recruitment marketing campaigns, where you should be spending your time and efforts making the calls and actually doing sourcing, you can look, again, not just on what you have done in the past, but also look at what the long-term success has been. Because if you've hired 20 people off of website A, but 15 of them leave within 90 days, and you've only hired 10 off of website B, but all 10 have stayed after a year, your efforts should go towards B. And so it really helps you just getting more efficient and effective at your job.
Yeah, you said a ton of stuff there.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. No, it's all good. It's all good because it's funny, and I know exactly I know the ideal research you're talking about with the predictive, and man, I was looking at that the other day actually, and it's funny because there's a couple of products that are out there. Ideal's one, Glassdoor is another. And I can't think of the name. There's a third one I can't think of, and then way back, not even relevant. Well, it's relevant to today, but it's not active. Aki with the J score. This is a long time ago when he and Craig were doing some stuff together. They spoke about this all the time, and I'm pretty sure the ideal one you're talking about is the infographic where it was the where to use prescriptive and predictive as opposed to the manual process. I think I was looking at one like that. But anyhow, some of the questions that were coming in, at least that we're seeing come in now, is where in the process should recruiting managers look to implement or integrate this type of reporting to make I guess the recruiting process more efficient.
Yeah, I think as early as possible. The earlier we can get data and analytics to come into play with our process, the better it is for the actual outcomes. So if we know even how many people are coming in and applying per a job posting per source, we know then where to better be spending that money, where to be better spending our time. But it can even go before that. So we can be using this type of metrics and analytics to be taking a look at our job postings themselves. Are they getting the response that we want to be getting? Are they written in a way that is detracting from certain types of candidates? Are we introducing bias very early on in the process? And so we could pull metrics back, and it can be descriptive. This isn't even about necessarily having to be predictive or prescriptive. We could do just really basic number metrics at a very early stage. But the earlier we can get them in, the better, because the more research we do kind of holistically around the impact of talent on business profitability, on business growth, on revenue, on customer satisfaction numbers, the NPS scores, all of it goes back. It starts at the very beginning, which is why, employment brand and the early stages of candidate experience and the actual measurable results of those, not the fluffy, let's make everything look pretty, but the measurable results of all of those numbers, we could see the impact trace all the way through the process if we have that metric involved. So the earlier you could get it started, the better. With most organizations, there's a financial investment required that they can't do. And so you don't have to buy all of the technologies. You don't have to implement the latest and greatest of everything in order to do this. You just have to use what you have in a different way. And sometimes it's plugging in different pieces, and sometimes it's looking at new technologies to either supplement or replace what you have. But the reality is we can't always replace our ATS or our CRM or our recruitment marketing platform. And so it's looking at how we could best utilize what they have. I think for most of the organizations that we work with, we find the gap and the biggest challenge for them isn't that they don't have the access to the information. It's just that somewhere along the line, when the product was initially implemented, set up, put in place, the process wasn't done with metrics in mind. And so sometimes it's just going back and kind of augmenting our implementations or making sure that functionalities, newer functionality, especially if you bought your ATS or CRM more than 18 months ago, making sure that newer technology is turned on. But the earlier, the better at trying to get this to measure it through the process.
Yeah, I'm getting some messages on through social here. That's the people on and listening, coming in and getting actually a couple of I guess we'll call them jokes or hits. They're saying yes, just like marketing has been doing for the last 15 years.
Yeah, it is. That's why I said And that's the reality. I mean, that's why I said we have got a pass. You know, recruiting has been a little bit more ahead than other areas of HR, with the metrics and stuff, but that's exactly what it is. I mean, we have to come forward. We have to be doing the same thing. It is no different in a lot of ways than what a lot of marketing teams have been having to do for, I don't think it's been 15 years, but for, 5 or 10 years for sure, with their tracking and their automation. And I'll be honest, I work with, I've seen a number of marketing teams that are also not doing this very effectively themselves. So, but it is true. I mean, just because other teams have been doing it doesn't devalue the impact that it can have on us, on talent acquisition teams, on talent management, and on a business as a whole by us doing it. So it's better late than never, right? It's just.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. In marketing, just to kind of come back to that comment. So, and obviously they were being funny, but it is true. And in marketing, we see it at the I guess the top of the funnel. I'm doing that in air quotes, the top of the funnel, where people are coming in because maybe they downloaded something, and you're qualifying them, you're moving them through that process, and so you're using some automation there to rank and stack rank and move people through a specific process to qualify them to the next level, whether or not that's getting them to your sales team or not. And obviously that's completely relatable to the recruiting process. And we've all been down that path before.
And here's the deal. The reality is a lot of the CRM, a lot of the recruitment marketing, a lot of the technologies that are on the market now came in and were influenced by, CRM and sales and marketing technologies of years before. In fact, there's a number that actually used to be marketing products that rebranded into HR solutions because there was a market gap here. So it's not that much of an unknown. One of the challenges, though, that we've had is we didn't have access to the technology. The technology wasn't being built for recruiting. It wasn't being built for HR. And when it was being built for us, it was being built in a price point and in a way that, short of, Fortune 1000 global organizations with huge budgets, they couldn't afford and they couldn't do. And so while we've been talking about predictive analytics since 2012, 2013, really heavily at conferences and all of this other type of stuff, the reality is the technology is just now finally here for the average recruiter to be able to access.
Yeah.
And so it's very unfair for us to kind of throw HR or recruiting under the bus, in a way. Well, marketing's been doing it for 15 years because marketing's had access and the ability to do it. They wouldn't have been doing it if there was no technology for them to do it.
Well, that just sucks the fun out of being mean.
I know. Well, I'm just I have to stick up for my brethren here.
No, yeah, I'm with it. So, okay, so predictive, right? Predictive recruiting can make my job easier, can help with culture fit. Now, I put something out on Facebook the other day: culture fit versus culture versus competency. I didn't do that because of this. I didn't even know this was going to be here today. We are doing another session next week, I think it is, or a couple of weeks from now, on culture versus competency. So I'm curious what your take on is there, culture versus competency, as well as the predictive recruiting, and can it make your job easier in completing the process?
Yeah, so in a way, yes, it can help with culture fit. Culture fit for me is something that I use very hesitantly because it's something that we have seen kind of the bro culture at some of these organizations use to exclude women, exclude minorities, exclude certain ages, ethnicities, backgrounds, etc. And so there's that negative side of culture fit. There's also the reality of culture fit. And every organization does have its own culture, and not every person is going to be comfortable and fit. That doesn't mean that organization's culture is negative or bad. It just isn't a great fit. I'll use an example. There's a client that I have worked with off and on for a number of years. They are extremely formal. So every time I go there, I have to be in a full suit, closed-toe shoes, hosiery, like hair gets pulled back. That is the culture. That is their culture there, and I respect that, and they're a great client. I love them. At the same time, I would never fit in there as a full-time employee. One, because they don't do remote working, but two, even if they did, my preference, if I had to go into an office every day, would be to go to one that I could wear like jeans and sundresses and wear sandals and, all of these things that we only get to do for 3 months a year in Wisconsin anyway. So, again, that isn't a positive or negative about the culture, but people that typically are okay or comfortable with that do have different cultural guidelines. They also, most of the people there work on average 50, 60 hours a week. There's other cultures which are a lot more laid back. Everybody hangs out after work. They're all friends. That becomes their source of relationship and belonging. And there's people that really strongly prefer that side of it as well. And I have other clients that are like that, where every night after work, everybody hangs out, everybody's at each other's weddings, and the weekends are spent vacationing together. That doesn't mean either of those bad, but you can find who's going to fit in with those the best. And even down to within a team, culture fit on a team is less often about personality and more about kind of the skill and competency match and what that team needs. If you have a team of all leaders, maybe it's not good to add another leader to the mix. Maybe you need somebody that can be more of a worker. And so the predictive also shows success. And so people with this type of background, skill set, traits, etc., typically have better success in this department versus that department at your own organization. So it could even come down to with each manager or with each department. Because again, the goal is not just to hire people. Our goal should be to hire people and put them into jobs that makes them happy and engaged and not looking to leave or be miserable. I mean, we spend the bulk of our life at work. So we should desire to make each of our employees be in a role where they could feel fulfilled and appreciated and valued, as well as have them in a role where they can contribute and be part of a bigger team and contributing to a greater good.
Well, that sounds pretty complete to me. Lex, do we have another? There we go. Oh, you went, there we go.
Yes, bias. Oh yeah.
I didn't want to say the word. It's like the bad word. Bias.
No, absolutely. I think this is fair. I mean, this is a question again that we have been getting every time new technology comes out and there's resistance to it. This is an easy thing for people to throw out. Well, we don't want to use video interviewing because it's going to create bias. No, it's going to expose bias. We don't want to do chatbots because this is a question that came through this morning. I don't want to use chatbots for recruiting because if somebody can see a picture, they're going to be less likely to accept their resume. Well, how many of your recruiters are looking LinkedIn, right? It's about exposing bias, if anything else. And when you start removing the human decision making out of some of these processes, then it is going to minimize, not increase, the bias. So Google actually talks a lot about how they have pulled data into the hiring specifically to reduce bias, because instinct doesn't work. And yet that's how a lot of us are trained to recruit. And we look for things like GPA, test scores, what college they went to, their degree, it's all of these other things. What Google has found as they've started continuing to roll out data into the hiring process is that a person's GPA as well as their test scores are completely worthless to their success within the organization, their success within the role, and their competency as an employee. They have found that interviews have absolutely zero relationship also with success in a role or success at the company, and that even if you're doing 4 or more interviews, it often is what they said is a quote a random mess. College, again, the same. We created this bias about 15, 20 years ago now that everybody had to have a degree. And that came out in part because we were getting so many applications in, and we had to have a way to weed out candidates. And so we started requiring college degrees for everything. That wasn't the case in the 80s and 90s. That didn't really start until the early to mid 2000s. And so we've now realized, wow, we were requiring this, and yet we have no correlation to success. I actually have met a number of high senior ranking officials at Fortune 1000 companies, VP, president, high level, that actually never went to college. And they're incredibly successful, and they're no less competent than somebody that went to college. They just learn their skills differently. So, they found that. They also found that the biggest predictor of success in any role and at Google itself was actually the ability to learn. And so the looking at assessments and being able to predict somebody's ability to learn and catch on to things and their openness and willingness to learn would be key. And so, the bias exists, whether we like to talk about it or not. The bias exists, and it's not because we could see somebody's picture on LinkedIn. It's not because we can meet them face to face in an interview or see them on a video interview. The bias exists because we are human. And so where bias is going to come into play with technology is more, I would say, on the AI side or the programming side. So as long as you're buying the technology from a reputable organization and you're not trying to build something in-house or do something kooky that's specific just for your company, I mean, that's where you're going to run into issues with bias. But otherwise, it's taking and looking at the data. I mean, it's data-based. It's not about what you think is going to happen or what you feel is going to be the right decision. It's given this, then why? If I eat a large pizza by myself, I'm going to be sick. I might feel like I want to eat a large pizza. I might think I'll be okay, but based on history, if I eat a large pizza by myself, I'm going to be very full and probably not feeling all that great.
For the record,
the bias. I have done that before, for the record.
I was going to say, for the record, I feel pretty damn good when I eat a pizza, a whole pizza. I can do that with no problem. All right, so we've got some questions coming in, and I'm just going to lump some of these together because I think they could be lumped together. What are some of the questions that I should ask when looking at vendors who handle predictive or prescriptive analytics? And then in parentheses, because Sarah said they go together.
They do, although you're going to have a harder time finding the prescriptive quite yet. But some of the questions is who actually built the algorithms and how are they getting developed? I mean, they should have a data scientist on staff. They should have somebody that kind of understands and is doing the research. Sometimes you'll see an IO psychologist in there doing this, but you really do need to make sure that they have a team that is going to continue to keep this updated, ongoing, and moving forward, because it is not something that should be kind of left to itself. It's not a build it and it's done from your vendor's perspective. The vendor, not you guys, should be consistently and on an ongoing way reevaluating the roadmap and improving this product. Talk about how artificial intelligence and machine learning are integrated with their analytics toolkits. It's not a requirement, but it will give you kind of the next level and help you just get some additional insight into what they're doing along that. Some other questions are exactly what are some ways that I can use this technology? Show me how this technology can be used to improve business outcomes. So at the end of the day, we need to start talking about talent acquisition and talent management from a conversation point of business outcomes. And so show me what this can do. How am I going to be able to connect the dots? And then the final question is, what points of the process is this going to be able to collect data on and roll it out? Things like partnerships and who they're partnered with, what products they work with, all of that obviously is key also. but those can truly vary and fluctuate from, quarter to quarter. And a lot of the smaller vendors, specifically for analytics vendors, won't partner with the larger ATS systems until there is a client. And that is because the ATS vendor will require them to have a client or two existing that they would be working with before they could do that integration. So don't always simply look at who somebody is already partnered with and exclude the other people. It's a little bit of the kind of the politics of recruiting technology and HR tech there.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the, and you may have said this, and if I missed it, I apologize. Because I know you mentioned algorithms. One of the challenges that I've had previously has been getting into a situation where the machine learning, the ML, was not customizable to the individual organization. So bringing in a technology that is not customizable really did us no good. And so that was a fail.
Can I correct that? Can I correct that? You do not want customizable, you want configurable.
Okay, configurable. Okay.
Yep. So customizable in general, when you're talking about HR tech, means dollar signs.
Right.
Configurable means flexibility within the product and flexibility within the technology. And so if you are looking at it, you do want to make sure, you're right, that it's configurable, and that, but only to a degree. Again, with machine learning and AI, you want a little bit more configuration. With analytics, there's a level of configuration you want, but you also need to be cautious about making sure that you're not damaging the integrity of your data, or there's absolutely no point in doing it. You also have to be willing to know that you may not get the results you're hoping to see.
Got it. No, that's a much better way to put it. I stand corrected as always when I talk to you.
No, just it's a term. Vendors are more than happy to tell you, yeah, we'll customize that, because they know it costs money. You want it to be configurable, which means it's free.
Nope, absolutely. So, okay, so what's coming down the pike here? What are we going to see in the next? And I don't like doing futuristic.
So I think within the next 24 months. Yeah, within the next 24 months, what we should be seeing, and where recruiters should be able to utilize this and really implement this more across the board, is on the job postings. And a lot of these we already can, they're just not widely implemented by products yet. They've come out, but they're not widely used by companies quite yet. One is on the job postings, that is on how they are written, the language that is being used, the design of them, and what that looks like to make sure you're attracting the right type of clients or candidates that also will minimize bias as well, if that is a concern for you, or if you have initiatives around diversity of any sort. The new technology around job postings would be a big benefit for that. The second part is that automatic candidate shortlisting, and so that is reducing the time that is spent sorting, even taking the candidates that are in place and helping you, based on those candidates, identify an expected time to fill, identify future candidate performance by source, as well as rate those candidates, their likelihood for success within your organization, or match to other jobs that you might have. The third would be for internal mobility or internal turnover, and being able to identify potential loss both inside your organization as well as externally. So who out there exists on the marketplace that is likely, based on other actions they are doing, going to be open to making a change, and at what point will that be? So Sally's probably going to be willing to make a change anytime after December 31st, because we know bonuses at that company come in on December 20th. And her, whatever the case may be, right? So it's making predictive behaviors. The next is on sourcing effectiveness. So where to source, where to be spending your time and resources primarily versus as secondary. Talent pipeline availability, where in the marketplace, so as we're opening up new locations or we're trying to expand, where's the best likelihood that I'm going to be able to find that talent and the availability. That's typically going to tie back to data that you don't have, such as census statistics, BLR results, unemployment rates, all of these things that are existing outside of your organization. Identifying skill gaps on teams and bringing in scheduling for temporary workforce. So contingent workers, contractors, consultants, any of those type of things we'll be able to see utilized using predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics specifically. Finally, the skill matching versus assessments. And assessment companies hate me, but it's true. Really focusing on matching the skill and the skills needed for a role versus, what's your Myers-Briggs profile? What's your personality type? But really focused on true skill matching and, like Google says, kind of somebody's ability to learn new skills. And then finally, around improving the quality of hire and the overall engagement. And this is where we really shift the talent strategy into being very business focused and having actual business outcomes and aligned with business metrics, as we are looking at more long-term where our candidates go. Right now, most of what we do with our analytics and our metrics stop when somebody is hired. Sometimes it continues through onboarding. In a handful of companies, it continues like, are they still here 90 days later? For most companies, that's it. What we should be doing and where we will be getting to with this is really looking at a full impact of not only this is where we are, this person has been here now 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 5 years, but here's also their performance reviews. Here's where they're rating on succession plan rankings. Here's how many promotions they've had. Here's been their performance overall, and linking all of that up. That is true quality of hire. That is really looking back and identifying where those sources are coming out so that we can continue to replicate and improve our hiring process around people that are going to give long-term business outcomes.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, we are out of time. We talked a lot. We've answered some questions along the way, but we're definitely headed down the right path. For everybody that's still on the call, here's what I want to make sure you do. Check your email in a bit, and we're going to get back to you obviously with the recording and the slides and some answers to the questions and things like that. But we're going to throw in some offers in there, or some resources I should say, so that you can click through, check them out, and read through some of the stuff, because a lot of the stuff Sarah was talking about today, there's a ton of research that is out there that is super helpful in all of this, especially around predictive and machine learning and identifying people ready to make a move into another job, everything Sarah was just talking about. So we're going to get that out to you guys, and hopefully that can help you make sense of all of this. If you have any other additional questions, feel free to reach out to me, Sarah. Her thing's on there somewhere at I'm So Sarah. You can find her pretty much anywhere, or get her at the company address there. And that's it. Sarah, thank you so much.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely. If you have questions, don't hesitate to just give me a call. We'll set up 15-20 minutes, and happy to go through with anybody on the webinar today and answer any specific questions they might have.
Awesome. And if for some reason you have trouble finding Sarah, we'll drop her information in the email as well. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll flip you over to Sarah, and we'll make sure we make some contact for you there. So guys, thank you so much for joining, and we will talk with everybody soon. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks, guys.